Hi, Rita, you're muted.
Here we go. I said, hi, Geneva. What, do they have you in the basement tonight?
I am down in the basement where it's safer. The internet doesn't work upstairs. I have to choke them.
Oh, okay. We don't want you doing that. Hey, Eric, you're muted.
I'm walking in on a murder here.
Yeah.
Just a minor
You didn't hear anything, Eric.
I know. I don't know nothing.
I don't know nothing. I like that.
All right.
I'm innocent.
So Rita, no, let me just show you quick the sheet I did, okay?
Oh, okay, great.
Oh, if I can find it, here it is.
Okay. Great.
We have a whole nother minute.
Vicki, can you just edit the top of that sheet? Or we were going to put the dates.
I think she might have walked out of the room for a second.
Oh, okay, I see that now. Thank you, Eric. I'm just talking to.
I don't know. Seems like a good idea, but where are you, Geneva? You're down in the basement somewhere. Down in your basement?
Yes.
Already
It's where the
we
internet
established
works
that.
the best. My husband works down here every day, so we know it
Oh.
works.
Oh, good. There you go.
Hi, Elizabeth. Oh, Becky, I was going to ask if you could just put the dates at
yeah.
the,
Okay,
and it was just, the application period was sort of a rough, we knew roughly when that was going to be,
yeah, it's,
like late March to early May.
I think it was actually May 23rd, but
They must have extended it because the original one said May, early, the first week in May. And then I think they did extend it.
okay, so I'll
When
say
I
early.
looked at last year's, it was due like May 7th or something like that. And then
It's an
Yeah.
E.
May 23rd rings a bell to me, but that's just a lot of things ring bells for me. Let's see here.
And it was February 3rd.
it's February 3rd last year
I
or
think
this
it's
year.
February 3rd this year.
Oh, it
I
is.
took off the instructions for the EOI.
Okay. Okay, I want to get going soon since we have a hard stop at 6:30. And we only have 2 select board members with us tonight. So I'm going to call the meeting, a special meeting of the Shutesbury Selectboard to order. And today is January, oh my goodness, 10th or 11th?
10th. It's
10th.
the 10th.
Okay.
Great. Hey, Rita,
January 10th, yes?
can I call ECAC to order since we have a quorum?
Yeah, I was gonna let you do that
Oh,
next.
thanks.
January 10th, 2023.
Rita,
And then
I'm
I was-
really sorry. I'm really sorry. I don't have internet here in Puerto Rico and I just got unmuted. And I wondered if the PVTA was on the agenda tonight.
No, I
Thank
sent
you.
you a text back. No.
Okay,
No, this is
Thank
a special, this is just a special meeting for municipal
I
vulnerability
understand.
program.
Thank you.
Okay, and other committees that would like to call themselves to order.
Well, thank you, Rita. I'll call the ECAC to order at 5:33.
Okay, great. Okay, so the agenda for this evening, there's only one item on the agenda for this special meeting, and that is our first discussion about the Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness Program. And I think if you're not familiar with it already, I think most people here are. This is a state program that makes funding available for municipalities to deal with climate change hazards and vulnerabilities. And it the town has already received one planning grant, one MVP planning grant to look at kind of a whole host of vulnerabilities that the town has. And it was a pretty detailed plan. In addition to the municipal vulnerability plan, the town also developed within the last, I believe, couple of years, a hazard mitigation plan. And all of this has to do with the effects of climate change on the built environment and the community, and looking for ways to mitigate that. So the MVP program has two parts. One part is where they provide planning grants, and then the second part is they provide implementation. We got a planning grant, we completed the MVP plan, which is quite detailed, comprehensive, and lays out a whole host of issues for the community. And we did apply. Michael played a really important, Michael DeCara played an important role in helping us put together an application last year where we had identified stormwater and our rural roads, particularly our dirt roads, as very vulnerable to climate change. So times of extreme rain, and look at California. I mean, that's about as extreme as you can get. But how do we plan for the effects of climate change? Too much rain, too little rain, too much heat, not enough heat. I mean, there's a whole bunch of different things that climate change will impact in our community. So we have an opportunity again this year to reapply or to apply anew. And it's the same basic parameters as last year, which means that we have a brief window here between now and February 9th, 3rd. Between now and February 3rd to get feedback on our ideas. And that's kind of atypical with a lot of state grant programs. Like they won't, they just put out their request for proposals and that's it. They won't talk to you. But we do have this window until February 3rd to engage with the MVP staff. And they will tell us, yes, you're on the right track, or you're not on the right track. I mean, they can't say, yeah, you're going to get funding. But it is a way of us being able to kind of just hash out a couple of ideas. And they are limiting us to towns to 2 projects that we can bring forward. So what we wanted to do before February 3rd is have these discussions with town committees and boards. The application itself isn't going to be made available till sometime in March. And we don't have any definite dates yet, but I think it said towards the end of March. And then we'll be due in May. So it will be awarded for the next fiscal year. Last year, I think it was up to each town could apply for up to $3 million. We don't know this year. We suspect that, it might be higher, or there might just be more money that maybe they'll keep that limit at $3 million. But it is an opportunity for Shutesbury to look at things that we have in our hazard mitigation plan or our municipal vulnerability plan. Please mute yourself. if you're not talking. So, as I said, and then I'm going to stop talking, but I just wanted to give you kind of the framework of what we're doing. So, what we want to do, the select board ultimately does the application, but we want as much engagement from other town boards and committees, particularly folks who are working on these kinds of issues, which the select board doesn't do. So what I want to do this evening is hear from all of you. It's not your first and only opportunity to talk about this. We're going to have more time. We're going to have time up until the application is due sometime in March. So what we're
Rita,
trying,
I think the applications are actually.
I
aren't
mean,
they
it's due in
in-
May.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm getting my dates mixed up. They're going to open it up in March. We're going to have time to write it. So we'll have 6 or 8 weeks to put the application together. But again, what we're doing tonight, and I hope at least, maybe one, maybe 2 other times before that February 3rd deadline, is coming up with some kind of what our top, and I guess I'd like to have 3 things. Our top 3 ideas that we want to preview with the MVP staff. So I'm going to open it up and hear from you folks, but I guess maybe just prior to doing that, Becky, do you want to put up what we talked about?
Yep. Rita, could we ask how many projects are going to be presented just to have a sense of time?
Yeah, we have an hour or less than an hour now. Do the different committees have projects already, or? Yeah, okay.
All right.
Conservation Commission, ECAC, anybody else?
Well, I was going to say, Rita, I can explain us. We don't have ones to pitch tonight necessarily, but I can explain when
Okay.
you're ready.
Okay, all right, sure. And again, I would say this is preliminary. So, what we have to do is we can put a really big list together and then try to sort through it. And if we don't, because we want to take something to the MVP staff by February 3rd, it doesn't preclude us from adding other things to that list before the due date for the application. Is that clear? We're just using this as an opportunity to kind of get some feedback on our ideas, because last year we didn't get funded, and we heard back from them, some things that they wanted us to be more project focused. And so, we want to go at this again and get as much guidance before we actually write the application. But we're not, again, whatever we present to them before February 3rd, we are not precluded from changing our minds when the RFR request for whatever's, I'm used to proposals. When that comes forth, we might have changed our minds. So this, again, it's early, but it's never too early in my mind to start talking about it. Okay, so does anybody want to volunteer to, well, Mary Lou, I see a question. Do you have a question?
Hi, yes, you had said that you wanted to get input from people. Do you mean the audience in full or the different committees who are here?
The audience in full, absolutely.
Okay.
Yep.
Is that time now or shall I wait?
Well, sure, that time is now. So if you had an idea for the municipal vulnerability program, that would be great.
Okay, my name is Mary Lou Conca for the note taker. I'm not quite sure I understand it fully, but I would like to suggest that as a project, the school roof be included to be repaired in its entirety. Excuse me. Thank you.
I don't believe that would be eligible, but we can certainly look at the criteria.
Okay.
So, Thank you, Mary
Thank
Lou.
you.
Miriam? And then Michael.
So I'm just gonna put on my Concom hat here. And I just sent the select board an email, but I'll just kind of summarize briefly kind of where our thinking has been. We end up looking and thinking a lot about stormwater as a commission because one of our tasks is considering erosion controls and so how the effects of stormwater on projects. And so we end up, looking very closely over time at town infrastructure on the roads and near wetlands. And we're always talking to residents about their projects and landscaping and the effects of their landscaping on stormwater on the roads and near wetlands. And, the way things work, stormwater, for people who don't think about this, is, water flows downhill and sooner or later water will hit wetlands and will carry with it sediments and contaminants if it's not contained and dissipated. So what I'd really like to encourage you to look at is an attachment I sent with some photographs that I collected from the last couple of years of site visits, because we often encounter erosion on the roads or culverts that are broken or damaged. And we usually document those. And I think a picture is worth 1,000 words in sort of underscoring why this is such an important issue for our town, particularly, and how challenging it is financially and just logistically for us to manage all of that, because we don't have it in our budget to replace all of these culverts and stormwater features. We don't even have a proper inventory of them. And that's kind of the topic I'd like to pitch to the select board, is that in looking over samples of other MVP projects that have been successfully funded in the past, several towns got funding to do a stream crossing technical assessment, which included mapping and surveying all the stream crossings and culverts in their town, and then doing an assessment of each one to determine whether it needed improvements or repairs and whether it was adequate given increased stormwater runoff with climate change. And I think that kind of an assessment would be so helpful to our highway department in our town for capital planning and thinking about other grant writing in order to replace culverts. If we can prioritize the ones that really are the most important and maybe bundle them for future grant applications, things like that. It goes without saying, but what I heard, I gave you guys copies of 2 sample reports from completed projects. One was from Belchertown and one was from Uxbridge, and these were from 2 or 3 years ago. I had a conversation with Julie Buza from Fuss and O'Neill, who worked with us, the town, on our MVP planning grant. She said that in the last couple rounds, those kinds of assessments have been a little less competitive because MVP is getting so many like shovel-ready discrete project applications now that these more vaguer, more amorphous planning grants that aren't going to lead to actual action steps are a little less competitive. But she said, it isn't out of the ballpark. It's still a viable option because it meets all of the criteria for MVP. And there might be ways to sweeten the pot for the MVP reviewers to make it more competitive. And I think that our suggestion would be to try to be creative and come up with if you're going to go in that direction, come up with a package, a proposal that includes opportunities for community engagement and community education, which scores really highly in MVP. Perhaps using the proposal to include a couple of action steps, maybe identifying 1 or 2 culverts that the town has already knows it need to be our critical infrastructure that need to be replaced. And another way to bundle this might be to look at Lake Wyola stormwater. There's been a lot of talk with the Conservation Commission and the Select Board about beaver management and people wanting the town to look proactively at engineering solutions in order to avoid lethal management of beavers. And that would be considered a nature-based solution. So if there was a way to bundle perhaps money into an application to assess critical culverts and develop management strategies that are appropriate, that would also be considered a nature-based solution. So all of those things. I mean, we often are educating residents when we're permitting projects about how to do gardening with native plants, how to create rain gardens, how to manage stormwater coming off the road onto the driveways or coming off the driveways into the roads, how to create vegetated buffer strips down by the lake and by rivers. And I just think there's so much opportunity for public education that we could be doing as a town, not just a conservation commission, but as a town. And it would be exciting to see some of that rolled into an MVP grant. So,
Thanks,
that's all.
Miriam. A number of the things you mentioned are the MVP criteria, so nature-based solutions, public education, those are the things that we're very well aware of and addressed in our last application. My quick reaction is we heard like project-based the last time around, when we kind of went in with this like stormwater and our dirt roads, understanding that it's a huge problem with the lake as well as a number of other places in town. So I think to the extent that we can focus that, and that's where we hope.
The only thing I would say is one, a technical assessment of culverts is a much more clearly defined end product. It's a known thing. It's a thing. Whereas a more amorphous engineering study is not as well defined. And it's certainly something that could be completed within 1 year. And I don't know if there's a way to make the argument, but for our community, I mean, I think it would be so helpful. We don't have a lot of resources for engineering designs on a year-to-year basis. So having this kind of comprehensive assessment would be a template for the next 10 years for planning and for our highway department, so that we really could have action steps coming from it. And I think without it, it's kind of like we need it so badly. I don't know if there's a way to pitch that, but I guess that's my thought about it. So.
Okay, good. Thank you. Michael.
Thank you, Rita. So I got one initial thing to share, just wearing my own hat and then sort of representing ECAC more importantly. The thing that I had mentioned a couple of weeks ago that I think is important at this stage is to see if there's, what's the additional criteria for the town. So we have a sense of what MVP wants, but as an example, the two that come to mind most readily are projects that we otherwise couldn't afford. So maybe there's a big dollar thing that we want to try to get versus something that's important. Like that's a balance. And then the other one is maybe the issue of how much of town is impacted. This is a townwide solution versus a targeted solution. And I'm not suggesting a priority for either one, but I think the select board might want to consider that so that when you're looking at it, that might help narrow it down. So in terms of ECAC, I was operating under the understanding in terms of time frame that today the select board was going to collect some ideas and then next week meet again. And so the plan for ECAC is we're actually we had 3 working groups. We started a prioritization process last month in the end of December, where we looked at all the recommendations from both the MVP report and the hazard mitigation report, which is basically our charge, and went through a process of identifying what our top 3 thematic things were. And the three themes are invasive species, solar, and stormwater. And we subsequently have had work groups that met since the beginning of January. So invasives met last week, solar met yesterday, and stormwater met, I think, earlier in the week. And each of those groups looked at the full list of recommendations and said, okay, in the category of invasives, what are the priorities and what are the actions that can be taken For our purposes, because we started this before MVP made its announcement, it has a bigger life than MVP. MVP is a singular funding opportunity that is good, but limited, time limited and limited in scope. So we, as a committee, we have a broader charge than that. But coming out of this process, I think we can offer up specific projects. And so we're meeting at 7 tonight, following this meeting, for each of the work groups to report out on what they discussed in those 3 categories. And my expectation is that sometime later this week, I can send the select board. I'm hoping that we can come up with, I don't know, 1, 2, 3, 4, some manageable number of projects within these 3 themes that can get forward to the select board, and then we can discuss next week. But the timing is good in that sense. We're sort of, it's a little bit more cramped than we would prefer, because we're sort of backing up on our meetings just to make sure we can get you good information. But I think part of what we will do at 7 is look at what we came up with in light of the MVP criteria in terms of urgency, et cetera, and project based. And I think, there's definitely overlap, and it wasn't necessarily by design, but, Miriam's on the Concom, and she's on the ECAC, and, Graham brings electrical engineering and was on the solar. So we have expertise and we have issues. And so some of the stormwater ones, for example, will overlap with what Miriam just talked about with culverts, for example, and nature-based solutions. Solar was really about forwarding the idea of we should have solar on all the municipal buildings, and how do we get there? So very, it's very tangible, it's very project oriented, but if that's the goal, what do we need to do there? Which is different from saying, let's create municipal solar to supply the town, but really to sort of make sure that the energy sources that the town buildings are using are solar based. And then with invasives, I think that is more education oriented, but again, there's the possibility of coming up with the invasive species management plan. So there's a something there that could be funded. And I think it just has to run through the filter, starting at 7, with us having more detailed thing of saying, for the purposes only of MVP, what do we forward? And then I think the last thing I just say, since, this is a select board meeting, is my hope is coming out of this process beyond MVP, that there might be some things that we can go forward with to the FinCom with select board support to actually fund out of the budget. Because, maybe the culvert process, maybe it's big dollar and they won't fund it because it's not urgent, but it might be really important for us. There might be some things like that. So I think whatever information we propose and discuss in the next couple of weeks could actually help in terms of the budgetary process. So I don't know if anyone on ECAC wants to jump in, since we actually have an official meeting, but that's all I got to say.
Thanks, Michael. Anybody else from ECAC? So just a couple of things, reactions, Michael. Yes, this is the select board is not making any decisions tonight. And, we have 2 more meetings before February 3rd. So we meet again next week on the 17th, and we meet again on the 31st at a regular meeting. And, if we were to wait till the 31st, we then have 3 days to get in touch with the MVP staff and go through our, what ideas we have. So ideally, we don't wait that long. I mean, they like to hear sooner rather than later. So I don't want to cut the discussion off too early though, because, other things might come up, and there aren't as many people here tonight as I was hoping. I don't know if that people weren't available or didn't hear about it, whatever. But I would like it to be as broad as possible, and have people feeding ideas into the committees too, whenever possible, to the Energy Committee or to the Conservation Commission.
Yeah, and just one little follow-up note. We've scheduled an ECAC meeting to coincide with the select board meeting next week. So with the information we propose, I'm assuming some of us will show up. So if you want to actually have a conversation, we'll be available for going to the details.
Okay, that will be great. And just in terms of, you mentioned criteria. So Becky and Michael and I had a conversation maybe last week and talked a little bit about this, just a kind of another post-mortem on last year, you know, and why we didn't get funding and sort of maybe what we want to do differently here. And I think one of the things that we're doing differently is like starting this process way earlier than we did last year, because we were kind of rushed, and it comes right after the holidays. So it's like, boom, they give you, you know, a pretty narrow window to talk to them. And then the RFR doesn't come out for another month and a half or 2 months. So there'll be another, you know, we might go to them by February 3rd and they hate our ideas, and then we're going to start all over again. But we have an opportunity to start all over again. So that's the good news. But just in terms of some criteria that we talked about, and I guess we could add another one here, Michael, was, you know, having whatever projects we come up with align with our 2 plans, so that, you know, we went through this whole MVP planning process, and obviously we don't want to just like willy-nilly pick things that are not even, that weren't seen as high priority, and they were prioritized within that plan. Discrete and achievable, that's sort of what we heard back, you know, from the MVP folks. Project focus, it's a little redundant, but yeah, having a specific project. And then under that, the impact on the town, the urgency and impact on the town, and maybe we could say lack of other available funds to add a 5th one. Other town funds not available or very limited or not available for the project. Does that make sense? Okay. And that, you know, we didn't have any kind of formal vote on the part of the select board, but I think that's probably, you know, I'll present that to the select board and say, are these acceptable criteria? And then as we discuss the projects at the next meeting and at the following meeting, if we have to, or another special meeting, we would use those criteria to kind of sort through all the ideas. So I want to keep going here. Mary Lou, do you have another question?
Yes, I thought Michael's meeting was going to be at 6:30. That's how I read it on the state meeting. I mean, not the state, the town meeting site. But at any rate, it's okay. I speak to him, Rita, here quickly.
You have a question for ECAC?
Yes. Yes.
I think it probably makes more sense at their meeting. Is it about what they're going to propose, or?
Yes, I thought they were having a meeting right now with you. No?
They are meeting with us. They're in formal session with us. And
Oh, but
then
not for the audience, not for us?
it's not, this is just to discuss MVP.
Okay.
This is a select board meeting, and
Yes.
the ECAC has called themselves to order because they have a quorum. And but it's the one item on the agenda is the MVP program.
Exactly, and that's what my question is, but it's
Okay.
specific to what Michael was talking about, and he was
Okay,
saying
good.
something, yeah, he was saying something, I think, about proposing to have solar on all buildings, municipal buildings, of which I do believe the elementary school falls under, so perhaps that could be a project, and the roof could be repaired, and they could put solar up all at the same time. And that would really be wonderful. Thank you.
Thanks, Mary Lou.
Yeah.
Or they will take that under advisement. Miriam?
Thanks. 2 things. One is, I had asked Becky, and I'm wondering, Becky, if you could email me a copy of the grant application that was sent last year. I would like to take a look at it.
So you're
Is it up?
talking about the one that we submitted in May of last year.
The rural roads one.
Okay.
That'd be
That's available on, if you go to the town website and you go to the MVP link,
Uh-huh.
On the town administrator page, you will find that.
On the state, when you say MVP link, MVP link.
No,
to the
on the
state?
town, if you go to shutesbury.org, on the home page, there's in the new, right under the news section, there's MVP information. Just press on this link. And if you press on that link, you'll find last year's application
Okay, that's great.
on the town administrator's page.
Two other things I just wanted to share. One was that, I think when thinking about developing this application, if the town goes forward with it, and I've mentioned this to Michael, I think it would be really good to try to leverage as much grant writing expertise as we have available as a town. And I know, for example, Beth Wilson is on our commission and works for the town of Amherst and has worked on MVP grants and other environmental DEP grants, and has volunteered to help with a working group in the past and would be an excellent resource. And there's a resident who owns a property down by the lake, Bob Douglas, who is the conservation director, I think, for the town of Andover, or maybe it's North Andover, I'm not sure which. And he has successfully managed a couple of MVP grant applications, and he has shared with me that he's interested in volunteering with the town. So even though he doesn't live here year round, he is willing to share his expertise. So the other question I had was, and I guess the question for Becky is, do we have an understanding from Tim about what his priorities are, where he thinks, needs would be priorities from the DPW's perspective?
I'm not sure how to, yes, he has a sense of what priorities are in town for the roads. He definitely does. Does he view it through the MVP lens? No, but he has a clear understanding of where all the issues are that he might think are important to look at. But I'm not sure what your question is, because he's, if you're talking about, would he identify a culvert that might need work or something of that nature? Is that what you're asking?
I'm asking if he has shared with you for this particular issue for an MVP grant, are there some things that he particularly feels would be actionable, either a specific area that needs repair work or a kind of an evaluation? That's what I'm wondering about.
We discussed one area, but we're still in discussion, trying to figure out the best approach for that. And I'm not sure. So we've had limited discussion.
Which area is that?
We're still in conversation about it, Miriam, so I'd rather focus on other issues. There's one culvert that I know you're concerned about. I've talked about it in other meetings with the select board. It's the culvert across from the Dudley Pond, that dam there. His concern is not anything if everything stays the same. He is not concerned about that culvert. What was brought to my attention is there are efforts in place to potentially over time remove the dam. And so what I spoke to Tim about was the possibility of getting some engineering done to evaluate that culvert, given the scenario that the dam's removed. And I think that's a very important issue, especially if it comes together that Lois is able to move forward. She'll need a massive amount of funding. There is some engineering funding that some people that are working with her have, but they'll need quite a bit more. So it's, at this point, I think it's going to be a very important issue, and that's what I talked to Tim about. But the timing of it, at this point in time, if nothing changes at the dam, there's not the need, but it could become an urgent need if the dam is removed. So depending if we get more information, I might be coming back with that, with him and that proposal, but we'll have to see what happens.
Thanks, Becky. Other questions, comments, ideas? So it sounds like ECAC is going to be meeting and you guys are going to be refining your list in preparation then for next week's select board meeting. And limited to at least like 5 or 6 things, okay?
Less than that, yeah.
Good. And Miriam, has the Conservation Commission discussed kind of your proposal or general proposal, or you said you sent something?
I
to the
just sent you an email.
Okay.
Yes, I mean, we talk about this all the time, so it's not like we're just talking about it now. This is an ongoing topic, townwide. And I wouldn't say it's just, we're not just interested in one particular culvert or one area. You know, we're looking broadly at the whole community and see a lot of challenges where we need more engineering, more funding for changing, improving infrastructure. There's a lot there. We're a hill town, and you know, and we have a lot of dirt roads, and it's all pretty complicated.
So you were focusing on the stream crossing inventory and assessment, and then potentially some culvert work.
I think that stream crossings and culvert replacements would be really important for the town, and they do appear to be things that MVP does fund. And I think that there are ways to bundle it to make it even more robust in application by, you know, including some of these other, you know, values that are part of the MVP program. But, you know, I think the other issue, and I guess I don't want to get down into it too much, is, you know, Lake Wyola District is an ongoing issue for the community. And I know that LWAC and FERCog are in the process of developing a watershed-based plan that would then lead to the ability to apply for DEP grants. But that's a multi-year process. The watershed assessment will be completed sometime this year. And then there would be a possibility to apply for DEP action grants, maybe the following year or the year after that. So and then, you know, the work would get done even later than that. So we're talking about years down the line before actual work might get done. So I would just encourage the town not to just put all of its eggs in one basket and look at one funding stream, but to look at all possibilities. Because, you know, there's just no guarantee that one particular grant resource is gonna come through.
I think that goes without saying. We need to be looking for money wherever there's funding.
I know, but I've heard people saying, oh, we don't need to look at any other issues right now because FERCog's doing this watershed-based plan. And I guess I would say that watershed plan is going to be helpful, but that doesn't necessarily mean we shouldn't be looking at other things now. We shouldn't, because that is, you know, way down the line, right, before anything would be in our pockets.
Good, thank you. Anything else?
One question I have is, how much there's always that issue with Lake Wyola that I hate to bring it up, but the issue of like it's private roads and you know, we all know the story. How much should we be worried about that affecting, let's say we wanted to include something for Lake Wyola in this grant proposal. Do we feel that there'd be any effect with that? Would they look at that grant proposal and say, we're not going to get into that. That's private roads, or, you know what I'm trying to get at? I'm just a little unclear in that.
MVP supports funding of private parts of town. So this is
cool.
one grant that would not take issue.
Yeah. You have to
Which is
get,
which is a good thing because those roads all affect the lake, and we own the property under the lake, so.
Well,
it's a
that
big-
just because they will include that, does seem to me that might make be some weight toward doing something at the lake, or trying to do something at the lake, because other grants won't do something at the lake. Let me put it that way. So that's all. I'd throw that, just the lake. I would throw the lake issue out into the discussion.
And
Ooh.
I'm sorry, Rita.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, who's the lead at FERCog, Miriam? Do you know who the staff person is there?
I've talked to a couple people. Tamsin Flanders was one
Oh,
of the
yeah.
people, and
I think she's the one. She's certainly one of them.
what happened, just so you understand, is they started an engineering study last year, decided it wasn't sufficient. So they're scrapping it and waiting for this new funding cycle to come through so they can hire a new engineering firm to do a new assessment. So it's not even really underway yet. It's in the pipeline, but it's not, maybe it'll be done this year.
She was very involved with MVP. What did Tamsin was?
Open space, the open space.
Oh, maybe it was it our hazard mitigation plan?
Open space plan.
Oh, open space. God, I know some plan.
I know.
Open space. Okay, so she's pretty familiar with Shutesbury.
Yes.
Yeah, great. Okay, good. Any other questions? Okay,
Just a
so
quick process one, Rita. So if we
Yeah.
send, following tonight's ECAC meeting, if for the next couple of days, I send you an email with a summary, I'm assuming that would be helpful to sort of just prep for next week's discussion, if you have it then?
yes, yeah, and I don't know what our agenda looks like for next week. We will try kind of to maximize the amount of time we have, but if we have a lot of other things, we might be limited to 20 minutes. And so we're just going to have to be efficient, but I'll take a look at it, see how much time we can work in so we could continue this discussion. And then, as I said, if next week is not sufficient, or we feel like sufficient for the discussion, or we feel like we haven't, that there are other people who still haven't weighed in, then we might defer to the 31st. I am probably not going to be at the meeting on the 31st, or very briefly, I'll be out of town, a long ways out of town. So, I'd prefer to do as much before the 31st as possible. Okay, so with that, I think, Becky?
I just wanted to bring up the issue of the match. The gross match normally is 25%. So we need to be mindful of that. It can be done with time. Like I know a lot, we used the highway department's time last year as we had tried to address many of the issues you've been talking about, Miriam, and my time and some other time, as well as some materials. But last year, we were designated as a community that only had to raise 10% match. We don't know if we're in that status again this year. It would be wonderful if we are. But I just wanted you all aware, because as you look at proposing something, the match is one of those pieces we can't forget.
Right. Michael, I'm going to put you on the spot. Do you recall what was in that calculation for communities who didn't have to meet the 25% threshold? Were property values in there?
I don't think, I feel like it was, there was I think it was part population size. It might have been medium, per capita.
I thought there
income.
was some income criterion, but I don't think it was simply size, because that wouldn't be enough of a measure.
I think the
Okay.
property values were in there.
Do you?
Yeah, I don't remember, so I'll defer to Becky.
All right, well, we'll see. We're not going to know, but it is a good thing to remember that there's just so much in-kind contribution that you can make. So the more expensive the project, the bigger that match piece is. But maybe we can find out, maybe they'll give us some clue when we,
I can email Andrew tomorrow and ask when
yeah,
that.
just ask them. It's worth asking whether or not. And maybe if we could just take a quick look back at what those criteria were that let us go to 10%, just so we know for next week's meeting too.
Okay.
Okay, great. Well, thank you all for coming this evening. I really appreciate the input, and stay tuned for the select board meeting on the 17th to know what time. We will try to notify you all, but I'd also ask you just to take responsibility for looking at the calendar and know that at some point on that agenda, we will be talking about this again. And we look forward to hearing from ECAC. And if the Conservation Commission has anything else you want to add, Miriam, please let us know, because I know you'll be meeting again before that meeting next week. So,
Rita,
all
before you
right.
say goodbye, can we adjourn out before you guys do?
Go ahead.
Okay. Do I have a motion to adjourn? Anybody? Gail, I see you saying that. Second? Someone raise your hand. Okay, Nate, all in favor, just sort of give me a thumbs up and we'll make that work. Okay, cool. Thank you, Rita.
Good, thank you. And do I hear a motion to adjourn the select board meeting?
So moved.
And I'll second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Stalker, aye.
Errol, aye. Thank you. Thanks, Geneva, for that special night. And we'll see you all next week. Good night.
Night.
Thank you.
Thank you.